technically we are already a few days into the new year, but for me, my new year doesn't officially start until Monday, January 5th, because I've had about 2 weeks off from work. We call it our winter reset. It was the perfect amount of time to lounge, rot, relax, do absolutely nothing of importance. But now it's time for me to come back to reality and be presentable. So we're gonna have the slowest, coziest vlog. And with that, I will also be reading a book. One of my goals for 2026, specifically for my YouTube channel, is to bring back reading vlogs each week, but make sure that I am reading stories from BIPOC authors and marginalized authors. And that's what I want to focus on this year with my channel. This is so important for a lot of reasons. And as somebody who reads a lot of books, more than the average person, I have a job to make sure that I'm representing voices that are constantly underrepresented in our community. And the first book that I'll be reading this year is Graceless by Isabel Ibañez. Perfect timing because this book comes out January 13th and I can get my vlog uploaded by the weekend so you all can get a spoiler-free review. And hopefully that'll help you decide if you want to end up reading the book or not. As you all know, and if you don't, I love going into stories not knowing too much about the plot. I think that's the whole point of reading a story, just diving right in. What I know about the story is that it is a standalone adult fantasy romance that is very atmospheric, and the setting takes place in Renaissance Italy, which sounds fantastic. I am really looking forward to just jumping right in and getting sucked into another world, another time period, just so I can feel like I'm almost disassociating with what's going on in the world politically, even though it's very important that I stay up to date on the news, which I do on a regular basis. I do want to caveat by saying that I read one book by Isabel Ibañez, and it was one of her YA fantasies. It is What the River Knows, and I ended up not liking that book at all. I love the concept of the story and the setting, and I think that Isabel Ibañez writing just really brings the story to life. I just really didn't like our main female character, and that took me out of the story. It's so important that when we read stories about characters, we want to like them unless we're intentionally supposed to not like them. Here is to hoping that I will enjoy Graceless Heart, and I always say that every author deserves a second chance. Here is my second chance to Isabel Ibañez. I'm officially 30% of the way through, so what better time than to give you a reading update and my first impressions. I guess a little over 100 pages. This is a good time, better than no time at all. I am honestly not sure how I feel about the book just yet. I'm 30% of the way through. I should have some sort of feeling by now. Let me just tell you a little bit about what the story is about. Basically, this is a historical fantasy romance about our main character. Her name is Ravina, and she starts off the story by competing in a competition to try to save her brother who's been taken and held hostage by the government. Let's just say that. And through this process, she ends up getting kidnapped by this very famous, wealthy family in Florence. And the reason why she gets kidnapped is because they want her to do this task that they can't get done by themselves. Trying to be as non-spoilery as I can possibly be. The story reads very quickly. I am constantly wanting to continue with Ravina's story and also just get more interactions with this family and the love interest, which is an enemies to lovers. And while enemies to lovers isn't my favorite romance trope, I think it's done really well in this story. So I want to start off by saying that. And I do like Ravina as a character. I just still have a lot of questions, starting off with where is the historical aspect to this story? And also, can you tell me a little bit more about the magic system? Because we are dropped into this world of Italy, Renaissance Italy, right off the bat. And the plot starts from the very beginning, which is great. And we keep getting a little bits and pieces about the magic system, and we're learning that there are vampires, werewolves, mermaids, fae in this world as well. It sounds like within our world, there's other worlds where all these magical beings live in. I need more details about the magic system. I need more details about the world. I need a map at the front of the book, especially if you're going to randomly mention different places that I've never heard of before. The chapters are in Italian, and there are quite a few Italian phrases that are mentioned in the story. So who am I to say if it's an actual place or a made up place? I need more context, especially because this is a standalone fantasy. We're not getting a second book. We're not getting a trilogy out of this. So I'm hoping that with this next third, we can get more detail about what Ravina is even doing with said family that kidnapped her. Why are they important? While I know nothing about Renaissance Italy, something that I am noticing in this story, which I've recently found that I enjoy in fantasy stories, is the amount of political violence or political drama that occurs between different factions in society, and we're starting to see that. Also, from a socioeconomic standpoint, there's definitely a distinction between how humans are treated compared to those who have magic. And if you have magical abilities, there's shame added to that, and you kind of don't tell anybody that you have magical abilities. Let me tell you, when Ravina gets kidnapped and she's traveling around Italy, all I can think of is Twilight, specifically New Moon, where Bella has to go to Italy to save Edward, especially since vampires are involved in this book. So that's what it's giving. Right now, I'm pretty neutral with the story. My battery's about to die. Long story short, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but we're going to keep reading. It kind of seems like the author doesn't know what setting she wants to have us in. And that is what is irritating to me right now. Okay, talk to you later. Bye. I know. Isn't this couch perfect? It complements the green L-shaped couch right next to it so well. I love how the living room is coming together. We've been doing small renovations here and there, mostly just painting our offices. We're gonna work on the den next, which is where the fireplace is. Eventually, we'll get to the living room. We want to paint all of the rooms. But for now, I feel like the living room is very cozy, very eclectic, a little bit vintage inspired, and just has a lot of greenery. I am beyond happy. Go to Living Spaces if you have one near your home or check online, that's where our L-shaped couch and this love seat is from. Reading updates though, I am 80% of the way through Graceless Heart, but let me tell you how dumb I felt. This is a fantasy, but it's 100% a historical fantasy. And this is my fault. When I gave you my first impressions and I was like, I'm not sure what type of story Isabel is trying to write, well, that is so on me. I did not put two and two together with Italian Renaissance. I also have not taken high school world history since high school, since before 2011. So it's been a very, very long time, and I should have done my research. I ended up taking some notes in my commonplace, and everything makes sense. The story makes complete sense, and I have to say that I am thoroughly enjoying Grace's Heart. So when we think of Italian Renaissance, it's a time period where there was a very large concentration of wealth and power during this time period. So the 14th century to the 17th century, Italy wasn't a country just yet. City-states ruled areas both religiously and politically, and there was no separation at the time between church and state. The Italian Renaissance is also known as the cultural rebirth of Italy, and it all started in Florence, and this is connecting like dots, because most of the story is about our main character Ravina, who spends her time in Florence once she gets kidnapped by this really wealthy family. And this really wealthy family is connected to the Medici family. And the Medici family is a real family that lived during the Italian Renaissance. This is a family that controlled banking, controlled politics, controlled the arts as well. And when we think about arts during this time period, we have famous artists, Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, all names mentioned in this book. Dummy. I feel like a big dum-dum. And I know there was a tiny blurb at the beginning of the arc that just mentioned this time period, but I don't know what it is. I just didn't connect the time period with the story until I did some of my own research, and I feel very silly, and I take everything that I said back because it's a very compelling and interesting fantasy story. Also, something that makes sense is just how Ravina has been brought up and how people, specifically women, are treated in Volterra, which is where she's from, and even in Florence when she travels to Florence, or technically, she's kidnapped. During this time period, women are kind of treated like how they're treated now. They're treated as objects. They're treated as property. Women are supposed to be submissive. They aren't supposed to be well educated. Their sole purpose in life is to mother children and produce heirs. I find that to be very interesting, especially when we're talking about Italian Renaissance being such a cultural moment for Italy. But for whom? A cultural moment and growth for the rich, the powerful, the wealthy. It's a rising time for even religious. So I'm talking Pope. And this is a time period where lower income families are pushed down even deeper, and they're struggling. At the beginning of Graceless Heart, we notice that with Ravina's family, especially when we compare it to the Medici family and we get introduced to this other wealthy family. It's all coming together, and it's very good. And I'm really glad that I took some time to research and figure out what Italian Renaissance meant to me and kind of get the wheels to turn. Note to self, whenever I read a historical fiction, I need to do some more research so I can feel more immersed in the story, and I definitely feel this way after looking into it a little bit more. But outside of that, I do have some issues with the story. It's not perfect. I'm liking it a lot more. But for one thing, I don't think I mentioned this the first time. The story is told from mostly Ramina's point of view, and then we also get the love interest, who is the assassin or one of the sons of the family that steals Ravina. I think it's important that we get his point of view, but then weirdly enough, we get the Pope's point of view, and then we get some siblings of the love interest's point of view. It's not enough for me to feel like the story is continuing. How do I say this? It honestly takes me away from the story, and it takes me away from Ravina's point of view, and I understand that's the whole point of adding multiple point of views. Isabel doesn't include these point of views enough to make it feel like it's cohesive. I wish that we either didn't get those point of views. They're important, but I think maybe they could have been told differently, or we included more of their point of views rather than just sprinkling them in here and there. And then another thing, at the beginning of the book, kind of near the table of contents, we're given a list of different magical elements that are important to the story. And one of the main ones is called Night Flame. That is connected to a power that Ravina has. It's basically a stone. With this stone, there's other stones and elements. But for the entirety of the story so far, none of the other elements are mentioned. None of them. We only talk about Night Flame. So it's like, why bring up all these other parts of the magic system if you're not going to bring it back up in the story? I also think that the magic system isn't talked about enough. Part of that might be just because of our main character, Ravina. She's also trying to figure out her own magic and what it means to her. She's been suppressing it her entire life, and now she's finally accepting it because she has to use her magic to complete a task that this kidnapped family is making her do. And if she doesn't, then it's going to hurt her family back at home. The magic system is confusing because there is a lack of magic system, really. Also think that she should have broadened the knowledge a little bit rather than just zeroing in on one stone that is extremely important for the plot, for Ravina, and for Italy as a whole and all of these city-states. So there's a lot of pieces in this story, and the concept is so cool. I think the execution is just not what I am expecting. It's not enough. I do have less than 100 pages left. I am currently thinking I'll give this book a 3.5 out of 5. I normally don't do halvesies with ratings, but for the sake of this book, I just feel like it's better than a 3, but it's not a I loved it like a 4, because a 5 is like a favorite. So it's kind of in between a 3 and a 4, which would make 3.5. That's how fractions work. You know what though? Also, without even having finished the book yet, I would still recommend it. And that's good. That's saying a lot. Let's finish this book so we can finish the reading vlog. The sun is officially out. Wow. It's been raining all day, but now the sun is out, finally. And it got cold again. Welcome to global warming and winter time in Kansas. Woo. My room gets so much light now, I have to constantly figure out where to film so this doesn't happen. But it wouldn't be so bad, right? If I just had sunshine on my face all the time. I did end up finishing Graceless Heart. You're probably wondering why I have a different chair in here. The green and purple chair with the ottoman was gifted to me by my in-laws. They weren't using it anymore, and I really just loved how it looked, and I was so excited to use it. And I used it for maybe a little over a week and a half, 2 weeks at most. And I like to sit and read a lot. Obviously, I like to read a lot and also relax while I'm reading. While I would read for long periods of time, I was starting to get back and butt aches. I'm 32. This is what happens. You get old and everything starts to hurt constantly and all the time. And so we decided that it was time to part with the chair and get myself something that's sturdy enough and would also keep me reading for long hours. So with the mustard love seat, I ended up getting a recliner. It fits the room perfectly. There's a lot of white in here with the walls, but I think that with my books and the greenery that I have everywhere and more artwork that I'll be putting up, I think there's enough color that it doesn't look too white. I realized that I'm just maybe bland. I don't know. I am very happy with white walls. I know a lot of people like to do accents and a lot of people like colored walls, and I tried that with the terracotta, but this just works for me. The more light, the better. The more natural light, the better. I am really happy with how this room turned out. So that's why I got a brand new chair. Overall, the book ended up being a lot better than I thought it would be. Actually, no, I had higher expectations for this book. I think it's because the historical elements were so good, and Isabel Ibañez just has an atmospheric writing style and really put me into the Italian Renaissance after I did some more research. So I do think that Isabel knows how to write historical fiction, and in this book, the fantasy had potential, but the execution, it wasn't enough. I loved the historical and religious aspects of the story, and it really added value. The romance was fine. I was mostly interested in the plot of the story, and Isabel did such a great job of making me question who I could trust, and the plot twists were there. There were a lot of plot twists sprinkled in, and even by the end of the story, I did not see most of what happened coming, so I liked that aspect of it. Like I said, the writing style is really good, very atmospheric. You felt like you were there in the story. I loved reading from our main character Ravina's point of view, and her journey and what was happening to her was interesting enough. The romance wasn't my favorite part of the story, and then the fantasy needed more oomph. Overall, I still give this a 3.5 out of 5 stars, which is good. Not a story that I loved, but I would read more historical fiction by Isabel Ibañez. And maybe this is just a starting point for her, since this is a debut adult fantasy for her. She predominantly writes YA fantasy. I know that this is an anticipated read for a lot of people this year, and I don't want to hinder you all from going out and reading the book. We still need to be reading stories by BIPOC authors and underrepresented authors. Isabel Ibañez is Bolivian. She's Bolivian American, I believe. I think we need to read more stories like this because it was written well. For the most part, it was written well. Those are my final thoughts, and I had a good time reading the book, and I had a good time filming this vlog, which is ultimately what we want. Just some housekeeping. I was going to talk about the Artist Way and share my final thoughts on the 12-week journey, but I'm going to film a standalone video. So next week I will not be sharing a vlog. I'm just going to be filming a sit-down chatty video to talk about the Artist's Way. Also because I want to focus my time on reading this chonky book, The Raven Scholar, which is my book club's pick for January. It's so thick. I love a floppy book though. There's nothing better than a floppy book that just opens up like this. Timing is great because I don't have to film a vlog for this because I honestly don't want to since it's so chunky. If you want to read the book, then you should read with us. That's it. Great start to the new year. Great reading vlog. I will see you next week in another video. Have a great day. Bye.